Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we'll be shortly starting after Professor Jieun joins. So bear with us. Yeah. Coming, Jieun, I know, but just meanwhile, I think just we can have a just quick chat. So how was the lecture yesterday? Yeah. Oh, and if anyone has any idea or criticisms or suggestions, or if I speak, oh, I think Jieun joined, I think, but yeah, let's wait for a few seconds. So as always, please feel free to leave your comments and even criticisms or just suggestions or even just your general thought in any idea in general on the typing chat. I'll do my best to liaise to all of us at the end of the Q&A discussion session. And if possible, please turn on your camera. But if your camera is not working, that's fine. And please also keep your attention to the website of the Korean Education Center, and we might be organizing many other events as well as the upcoming, the future, the seminars with Jieun Kiaer with another topics. So we would like to have you again and again. So okay. 교수님 들어오셨나요? 네. 그럼 저기 시작해도 될 때 말씀해 주시면 시작하겠습니다. 네. 교수님 그 목소리가 그 음소거 되어 있는 것 같습니다. 네. 네.
Could we wait a few minutes for?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Let's start in 3 to 5 minutes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Meanwhile, please let me keep talking. So, and there will be the topic, the exam of the Korean, test of the proficiency of the Korean language in April next year, but application will start in beginning January. So if anyone is interested, please keep your eyes on our website of the Korean Education Center. And also the Jieun Kiaer and also her research team is also publishing the last of the interesting books in terms of the linguistics and the Korean language studies. So please also follow her website, and they have the Twitter as well. So so you might be updated with their the new research findings, blah blah blah, and Right, and please watch out for the new variant of viruses and colds. And okay, I think we have 16. I think this is more than what we planned and expected to have. So more than at least I think 8% of registrations. So okay, yeah. 교수님 시작할까요?
Yes, okay, we can start.
Oh, sure. Okay, right. Okay, now we start now. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for coming to the second lecture, also last lecture this month with Professor Jieun Kiaer. And I know many of you are already aware of our great researcher, but still, as principal, I have to give some short brief presentation about her. So Jieun Kiaer is the South Korean researcher in the linguistics and the Korean language studies at the University of Oxford, Faculty of Oriental Studies and Hartford College. And her research interest covers the theoretical linguistics, syntax, prosody interfere, and pragmatics, and also the applied linguistics, as well as translinguism, bimultilingualism, and also language acquisition in early age periods. And today, yesterday and today, we'll be hearing her recent research outcomes in the Konglish and Korean wave. So now, we have the Jieun Kiaer.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me on Friday evening. I really appreciate. I know Friday evening, you have many more interesting things to do, or make it too boring. So this work actually, I'll share my screen in a few seconds, but as someone said, kind of, I have different research interests, but this one basically lexical encounters, interaction between Korean and English and Korean, but also I've done previously, so English and some other languages, for example, like other Asian languages, how the interaction occurs in both sides. So that was kind of what I worked on last. Well, actually, this work started 2010, 11-ish, so it's almost 10 years. So it's and then I kind of thought about really like the way how the words are born, used, and the words live, the way how the meanings and words together formed so close to my own identity. And so I think it's very sort of interesting to look at the words, but that makes me to look at myself, my life and my identity. Who am I? What am I doing? So today I'm going to tell you more about Konglish in a way. Konglish, Korean English, Konglish. We don't have like very much established definition of Korean English or Konglish, and I can say that because I'm writing a book on that to be published next year. So I've done some good research, but basically same with other varieties of English, like Singlish or like Japanese, all very much like sort of these hybrid forms, the English word, like English words that born between and as an interaction between the two languages very often have negative connotation. And so, Korean English, Konglish is the same, but Konglish people kind of have more negative perspective, negative attitude. So I think that's very much like something that should change as in the coming years. And I think Hallyu would make the brand those Konglish words as something from more or less illegitimate words to like cool words. And I think this kind of impact or the understanding attitude I hope could also influence the way how we view other so-called foreign words in English language. So I think you are all probably living with different languages too, like your English is kind of also an important part of your daily communication in life, but you may have another repertoire, another language, and it kind of makes us really, this Konglish issue makes us think about our own language, our situation, and life in general. today I'm going to tell you more about like linguistic aspect of this Korean English words and language in general. So let me share my screen. And oops. Okay. Let's see. Can you see my screen and hear me okay? That's great. So yeah, Konglish in Korean wave. Parasite 2020, just before pandemic, Parasite was a very much big thing for many people, not only for Koreans, but also, for many people, in the world. But now we are, in 2021, very much recently, in recent months, I saw Korean culture also become very much popular through, the Squid Game and so on, like also the last year Minari and, Korean dramas again becoming very much popular across the world. Let me just share it. So you may remember this has been repeated again and again and again. So 무궁화 꽃이 피었습니다. This word, it's not a one word, it's a phrase. But somehow last month I had a couple of, actually 3 seminars. Maybe some of you have been in my seminar too. The thing about the Zoom talk is it's great that I can do this in my office in Oxford. But the problem is that I don't know who came to my talk. So very often, some of you must have been to my talk a few times last year and the year before, but I don't know. In a very much normal situation, I would really like interacting with you guys and the talk, but this is not really possible in the Zoom situation. So that's some kind of the downside of this Zoom talk. Nevertheless, anyway, I did this Zoom talk on translating Squid Game, and the reason why I did it was because I've been so many times, being contacted by different people, journalists, and so on, and asking me whether I can tell them, confirm the translation is right or wrong, particular translation is right or wrong. And I said, well, it's kind of difficult to say yes or no, this is right or wrong, because actually without really understanding the linguistic culture background, how Koreans actually understand interpersonal relations and how they kind of manifest those relational dynamics in language. Without understanding that, you can't just say yes or wrong. There's so many invisibility, layers of invisibility that are impossible to translate because due to the different linguistic characteristics between Korean language and English language. So anyway, in answering those questions, I started to, I planned this seminar translating Squid Game, and I've done some of the research. I asked people, what are that you learn through while watching Squid Game, and most of them were ab initio Korean learners, so they don't know Koreans at all, but they watch K-dramas and they they told me about the expressions they heard and remembered. And 191 people participate in my survey, and the number one word they remembered at the end of Squid Game was 깐부 and 무궁화 꽃이 피었습니다. 형, 오빠, 무궁화, 달고나, 오징어 게임, 사장님, 돈, 딱지. These words were the words that they said. Oh, I remember these words. I don't know Korean, but I remember these words, and they came back to me like. But number one was 깐부, which was very interesting. Yesterday, I talked yesterday that we are now living in a generation or time now that the distinction between this is Korean word, English word is not anymore relevant, because we are very much like living and using words together. There's so much word share when you, particularly like, for example, like COVID time, so many words we don't have time to translate, but also not just the time matter, but it's good that we all have the same words because that will make us communicate better. So anyway, there's so much interaction and so much word share, and the word ganbu considered by 191 people who joined my seminar. This is the word that I remember, and of course there's a very moving moment in Ojingo game, in Squid Game. But ganbu, well, what is it? Many Korean people, I mean, I can see here too, like some people who are Koreans, including myself. Ganbu, not really a word that you're very familiar with. Ganbu, etymology-wise, is difficult to know where it actually started, but according to my research, ganbu, it's some kind of slang word, but means often used in game and means friends. But this is kind of pretty much speculation, and I did some newspaper research and other corpus search, and ganbu has not been found. So you don't use the ganbu word in writing of any sort, but normally this is things that you use in colloquial speech between your friends while you're playing games. So what I'm trying to say is it's not the word that Koreans would be familiar with, or can say this is the word that we claim Korean word. But somehow, again, like through this big cultural cultural theme or like a drama, this word became popular. And if you look at the sort of like urban dictionary, like social media based dictionary, that the global fandoms put the meanings of ganbu, and they kind of make the meanings of ganbu, and they know more about ganbu than Koreans. Again, it really tells us that the identity of this word and the meanings of this word are not like you say this is Korean word, but what we shows is that the meanings are all made together by the global citizens who global fandoms or global users. Basically, it's kind of also showing us the user-based language and user-based lexicon. Yeah, so ganbu, I think story of ganbu really tells us, sums up what I talked to you yesterday. And we'll talk about today kind of more or less linguistic characteristics of those Konglish words. I mean, I'm not going to give you like, what Konglish is like, but it's because Konglish itself has a structure, sounds, and different aspect meanings. But we are going to talk more about Konglish words, the vocabulary. And in order for English words to live, survive, and thrive in Korean language, the foremost important thing is the form. The word sound should sound like a Korean words. And one problem is that Korean is very much like syllable-based language. So syllable is very important, unlike English language. And also, Korean words, as I said yesterday, most of the Korean name, I don't know how many of you have Korean friends. My name is Jieun, 2 syllable. Most Korean people's first name is 2 syllable. It can be like 3 syllable, 4 syllables, and so on. So basically, and the syllable structure is different from English and Korean. So in a way, in order for the word to survive in Korean language, somehow it has to be short. You can't have a 5 syllable word or 6 syllable words in Korean language, because if you have 5 or 6, 7 syllable words, people simply cannot remember, and it's not easy to use in daily life. So basically, the first process is to make it sound like Korean, and this is the book I wrote almost 10 years ago about the sounds of Korean, to discuss about the phonology, phonetics of Korean language in comparison with English language. So Korean syllable matters, and also if you kind of remember again the sound, maybe I can play one more time. This is not like arbitrary chunk or string of sounds. 무궁화 꽃이 피었습니다. Many of the times, Korean sound system are actually very much stable. Most frequently used sound structure is that one phrase, one breath. Like I know that I speak quite fast, but one breath. Normally, normal Korean people can say 7 syllables in one breath. And in 7 syllables would not be produced like one go, but normally 3 syllables and then 4 syllables, or 5 syllables or 2 syllables. So you basically make it as a 2 chunk, and that 2 chunk has to have some kind of balance. So 무궁화 꽃이 피었습니다. This is a bit long, but still you can see that 2 chunks are very much balanced. 무궁화 꽃이 5 syllable, 피었습니다 5 syllable, 5 syllable, 5 syllable. So it's very sort of stable structure. So if you kind of remember, like how can Koreans remember this? Well, actually you make very much balanced structure, and 2 syllable words, 2 or 3 syllable words actually are very important to make it 2, 3 syllables, very important. And as a result, many English words kind of not like used as it is, but chopped, make it 2, 3 syllable. So it kind of it's kind of being shortened. Shortening is one of very important strategy for English words to survive in Korean language as Korean words. So, okay, sorry. So, and of course, you may have noticed a lot of times, particularly when Korean people speak in English. Of course, this is not like just Koreans. People when you speak Korean language, the first hurdle is that the language to whatever language you are speaking daily and the foreign language sound systems could be different. Korean and English structurally very different. And sound system also very different. So, particular word sound very, different. Koreans can't, maybe this table looks too complicated, but simply speaking, Koreans, at least but this is changing. F sound to fu sound, very much Koreans to kind of simplify F into P. So fighting, in English fighting, but Koreans say fighting. At least they write fighting. But these days, actually, because we are exposed to English language so much, young Korean people can say fighting rather than say fighting. Most Korean people say coffee rather than copy. We write copy, but Korean people say coffee. The young people coffee, old people still say copy. Very interesting. Very often when you say copy, it's kind of like more instant coffee. Whereas if you say coffee, it's more like the drink coffee. So there's a sort of interesting distinction. It's also generation by generation. I think it's because we are exposed to English so much. Now it's the young generation do not have these problems, and our sound system, Korean sound system, is changing as a result. But anyway, these are the things that somehow you can see that English and Korean sounds different. So English, whatever F sounds, when it's Koreanized, it will become like pu. And at least in orthography, people write pu rather than fu or something else. We don't have that phonetic alphabet in Hangul. And the thing about vowel system, that this is kind of the simple vowels in Korean language. I, U, U, E, O, U, A. These are the simple vowels. A is very simple. Every language has A. I, simple. U, simple. O, E, simple. These are all, okay, fine, I know how to do it. But the problematic vowels are U and O. Particularly O. It's very difficult because U and O, distinction between U and O, not very much present in many languages, very rare. Plus, O sound, the O vowel is again not very popular across languages. But nevertheless, in Korean sound system, very inconvenient. U, O sounds, these sounds are very popular. So what I'm saying is that U and O are very popular in Korean, but these are not the popular sounds cross-linguistically, cross languages. So the problem is how we romanize, how we write U and O. U and O, or like O. Very often, because Seoul, Seoul, how to romanize Seoul, S-C-O-U-L. And again, like if you go back to history and how Seoul ended up S-C-O-U-L, there's a long story. Maybe if I have time, I can tell you later. But somehow the people have some kind of example. Okay, Seoul is S-E-O, so let's do whatever O sounds E-O. That is could be one answer. But E-O is again the string. The sequence of E and O in English language is very rare. Can you think about any word that has E and O together in English? Anybody can say if you remember, if you can find one. Do you have any word that has E and O together in English, or not? Can you? It's very difficult. So E and O, very not natural. Plus all sound, because English people in many languages, not only English, don't have all sound. All is very close to U phonetically. So this is why mukbang in Korean becomes mukbang in English. So all people kind of, even if I say all, you hear it as U, because U is closest to the sound to all for many people. So it became mukbang rather than mukbang. So anyway, these are the words that kind of many Korean words, actually many Korean words, like for example, John, like pancake, or how do we do it? EO. Some people use EO because of their habit, or they saw it somewhere else, which Koreans romanize it. Sometimes people romanize it as Jun, you. So there's a kind of a lot of variation. Of course, because these Koreans are from non-Roman, we use Hangul. So romanization is not natural. It's natural, and it's in a way it is natural that we have many variations. But these are one of the reasons why so many romanization coexist as we see nowadays. It's because the two sound systems so different. But this is very popular. No problem with E, but U and O. These are the problematic sounds for non-Koreans, and this creates a lot of romanization variation. It is as I said, this is kind of sound structure. Is that what I said? 7-syllable words and 3-4. So this is kind of most stable structure that Koreans have, and based on this, Koreans understand. But the sound structure is very different from English and Japanese languages. But this is how Koreans structure their sound and how they count. The syllable is very important. Try to make everything 2 syllables, 3 syllable, and that is kind of your goal. And this is how the English and other foreign words enter into Korean lexicon. As a result, for example, like I only put some of the examples from my my previous book, and there's so many, so I can't, these are just very simple, and there's so many. Basically, very much I discussed that in my book 2014 about most of the daily vocabulary in South Korea now. This is not the vocabulary that is in dictionary. In dictionary, which is not very friendly to English hybrid words, only 7% in the whole entire dictionary are sort of English words, but mostly they are the what I call first generation English words. So the kind of English words as they are. Anything that Koreans made, the Konglish word, Korean English words, are not really welcomed in any of the dictionary in South Korea. So we can't just say, well, actually, most of the words are Chinese origin. No. This is just dictionary matters. But in everyday matters, as I discussed in my book, most of the words actually are kind of Konglish words, whatever we face. And because it's very useful, people really understand English words very well. And it's kind of easy to make up words, one word, one syllable from English, one syllable from Korean, one syllable from Chinese, like chimek, together, and you make a new concept. And Koreans, I think, very active in terms of making new things, also new words. For example, like best friend, best friend is not actually a word in English. Of course, we use English best friend, but not necessarily as one word. But Koreans made up one word, best friend. But again, like by chopping, be from best, pu from friend. English people can't understand, speakers can't understand what does beppu mean from best to friend. Now Koreans use, again, 2-syllable principle. Like it's okay to have 1 or 2, but make sure that you have 2-syllable, make it 2-syllable words, then in a way that will speed up naturalization. So, it doesn't stick out as an English word, but they will become very easily nativized and in Korean words. So 2-syllable, 셀카 and 셀피. Maybe I can only I also talk about 셀카, self camera. Again, you can see, not actually altogether self, we only cut like sell part and put cut together and selka and made a new word and new concept. Selfie and selka. There's a kind of a very interesting video in British Council website in South Korea, and I laughed a lot because in this British Council video they say how selka is such a Konglish word that we should never use. But when you think about selfie, originally it's from made in Australia. When it first used, people didn't know, oh, what is that word? But it somehow entered in English language, and everybody knows what selfie is. But somehow selfie is made in Australia. Selka is made more like from Korea, or is there handphone, mobile. I don't think that one is more privileged than the other. It's kind of very much kind of reflects diversity and different use and different pragmatic needs. And we see very often like these videos or like people talking about, oh, how can Korean people use handphone and the Germans use handy. Well, how can they say mobile is the word? But when you think about the population wise, actually, and linguistic, the composition, why should we say handphone is wrong word, whereas mobile or cell phone is the right word? So we can kind of consider that question again. We can ask this question because right now in English language, the population who are speaking English as a second language is much more than those who are speaking English as their first mother tongue. So basically, people who are like me, more than the people who learn English as the mother tongue and English monolingual. When English monolinguals in an inner circle English is very much minor. So, why should we say this is only the most privileged, but, think the others are illegitimate? Why can't we say, oh, this is the same equal variation, variety of English language? So it's kind of more discussions we can have later. So anyway, 2-syllable words. And again, chimek, I took this photo from my office, outside my office. I love manga, this is, again, like the same question, what is it? It's the whole thing about even using heart as a word. How could you define this as, is it Korean or is it English or is it Japanese? I mean, of course, not Korean. What is it? So, but heart should never, heart should be, of course, not belong to one language. Heart, what is this heart? What is the identity of this heart symbol, which everybody knows now? How can we define the identity? So it's again like kind of my my proposal behind all this kind of translingual, transcultural. Define one or the other, like this is English, this is Japanese, and this is something else. Chimek, going back to this chimek example again, chimek, 2-syllable, and chi is from chicken. I found from very old Korean newspaper, the first time when the chicken was used, the word chicken used in South Korea was 1940. So 1940, some elite people used the word chicken to talk about, sort of English, sort of Western cooked chicken dish. So that chicken was first used in 1940s. And then since then, now people talk about chicken, chicken very much like, so, as a way to talk about sort of Western style cooked chicken versus we have the word 닭, which is like a Korean chicken. So people say, oh, I want to eat chicken, means I don't want to eat Korean style chicken, but I want to eat Western style, like very often fried chicken, like not, I think Western style cooked chicken, Western style doesn't make sense because, how do we define Western culinary cooking? So, but very often chicken, kind of in my understanding, chicken was kind of more or less fried chicken, American fried chicken. That's what I always, I want to eat chicken. It's like American. But nowadays, as you watched the BTS video yesterday, that chicken, not necessarily they're talking about the American style chicken, but they were talking about the sort of Korean chicken. So what I'm trying to say is that it was actually Western or like American fried chicken. But then, of course, Korean made a big, like chimek, Korean chicken became so popular. So it's kind of westernized, Koreanized chicken. Now that chicken came back to English language and entered OED 2021 now. So, since 1940, we first time accept chicken as sort of more Western cooked dish, but now it's back. And this is called sort of boomerang war, so you come back and forth, different lexicons. But I think this is becoming much more common nowadays. So now when you think about chicken in English now, then sort of course, it depending on context, but when you're talking with this ARMY fandom, BTS, K-pop, K-wave fandom, chicken actually means it's Korean chicken, Korean fried chicken, which actually was imported from mainly American cuisine. And then, but then we can think about, was chicken, that fried chicken, really American? Then we can think of, oh, actually, that's another history. So when you go back, when you pick up any cultural item and the word behind, you can see like history after history, and then how actually the word, how the way how we talk are interwoven rather than like one directional. So I coined them as Hallyu words anyway. Sorry. So some of the surveys I did in the past, this has been some long time ago, but for example, like I gave this word to English speakers, but I say English speakers, but again, I did this survey in the UK, but that's it. How can they so assume that they are English speakers? But again, we are English speakers, but our heritage, linguistic background, all different. So it's how this Englishness has to be defined again. But anyway, I gave them these words as 20 plus age people, and I did about 100 people. So it's a kind of sample survey. But what is quite interesting was that people have very different opinion, nativeness. So the question is, do you think this is English word or not? There's the other questions, but their opinions vary. Not like, oh, yes or no, but maybe or maybe not. So people's opinions are very much like different. For example, like water park. Water park, because in Korea there are many water parks, like entertainment park, but water park this is a compounding word, water plus park. So you can actually make the meaning quite easily. For these words, very much those compounding words, very much the English speakers kind of think, oh, this is English word, very much these words very nativized or naturalized easily in an English lexicon. But also, as you can see, like social network, smartphone, English word, webtoon, English word. Sort of Echo, Google, it's Google as a branding name. A lot of time, it's Google's headquarters in the States. So this is English word. There's so many interesting questions, but you can see like this was the way how people thought about sort of Englishness, nativeness words. But then Chinese people, actually these were like all presented in Chinese characters, but they think these words actually the Chinese words. So you can see the difference. And German people thought differently, like, so these words they think is more like German words, but like kimchi, 10% who thinks, okay, could be German words, lies in dictionary. Some people think, oh, not. So you see like variation. Google, they don't think it's German word, and so on. So what I tried to do was like very much like cross-linguistically. I did many European and Asian languages, and I did a lot of kind of so-called new vocabulary, or like e-vocabulary, IT vocabulary, and foreign cuisine vocabulary, and ask people what do they think about their opinion, attitude for this word. And what I can say is that people, everybody has different opinions, not quite sure whether this is, although they use these words all the time, they don't know whether to consider them as their words or foreign words, not quite sure. That there was the variation, different, very much depending on, very personal, individual by individual, different opinions. And in the case of South Korea, these words, it's not my work, but National Institute of Korean Language, they did a very big survey. So 2,000 people, almost 2,000 people, 1,948 people they have participated in the survey, and they had, this is sort of back in 2007, so I think it hasn't been updated yet, but it's been a long time ago. But nevertheless, at that time, and this is the word how they perception, understanding, production. So whether they know this word, they can understand the meaning, and they use it daily. So what we can see here is that these words, netizen, download, data, database, digital, roaming, blog, spam mail, offline, emoticon. These words never, I mean, of course, NIKL always presents some of the words, the so-called pure words, that these words are very, the foreigners, South Korean government say, oh, we need to use pure Korean words. The word pure is always emphasized, but nevertheless, people actually use these words as English words as their, our own words, and then they understand and they use in their life, and so very much high. Most of them 70% daily use. And then, of course, Korea being very much strong in IT, you see like these words I showed you, digital, and again, digital camera, too long, digital camera. So they made DICA abbreviation. So abbreviation is very, very important for Korean English word. Roaming, multimedia, backup, software, spam, offline, UCC, e-learning, emoticon, selfie, homepage, network. These are all now very much like those IT words are nativized. So Koreans, we can't think about any so-called pure Korean words for these counterparts, although these words not in the dictionary, and they may not enter a dictionary anyway. So this kind of very important part of South Koreans' life made in Konglish words, as their identity are questioned because they are not in the dictionary, although they use it all the time. This word will not go away. One of the arguments they use when whether to include the word in the dictionary or not is, well, some transitional word will not enter, but these are not transitional words. They will stay forever, I think. And when you think the word like e-learning, we know what e-learning means. But English people don't use this word very often. I did some sort of newspaper corpus work, and I think you can also agree with me. You don't, maybe in writing, but you don't use the word e-learning so much. But this is back in 2007, South Korea, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60s, the different age group, they use this word, understand this word in their daily life. So again, you see, this kind of more like sort of Koreanized IT words, showing English fragments, most popular in South Korea more than anywhere else. So e-learning, and then netiquette. Netiquette, you can imagine what netiquette means. It's etiquette plus netiquette. So it's kind of called blending. Make the way you make new words. There's one way. The first way is compounding. So you put the two bits together and make a new word, like water park. And derivation is basically you use prefix or suffix and to make a new word. And then the blending is, as you can see, like you pick up a bit of this word, a bit of that word, and they put together. Blending is very, very popular in South Korean morphology lexicon. But netiquette, you can imagine netizen plus etiquette, and in etiquette as a netizen. That's a meaning that you can remember. But I again like look at the word in the media. I didn't do social media at that time, but looking at the newspaper or text media, netiquette is hardly used in anywhere else. But in Korea, this word netiquette, which is very was important because again, being so much like IT strong country, we were talking about basically the etiquette, the courtesy in talking as a communication as a netizen. So this word will be very useful, talking about that. And then you see here like 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 plus, very much like everybody under 90%, they understand, 90% they use, understand and perceive these words all the time, daily use, and they are very positive attitude to these words. So, even those words that are not like used in perhaps in UK English, this has been very popular in South Korea. So again, like, when you think about the words exist to cater our needs. And in South Korea, the needs are different. Although we use English as our ingredients, but the practical needs are different. Pragmatic needs here, there, and everybody's needs are different. South Korea, you need particular words to talk about etiquette as a netizen. So this word has been used. Of course, netiquette, if you look at OED, it's not coined in South Korea, but somehow popularized in South Korea. Same with many words actually, including skinship, or like in many cosmetic words, not like actually coined in South Korea, but somehow popularized in South Korea, and then through Korean wave, exported to different places as global words. But anyway, like BB cream, first coined in German, but then it become popularized in Korea, and then because of Korean wave, BB cream now is in the dictionary and is known as sort of Korean cosmetic cream, and that gained. So you see, like, so many words are somehow kind of the blending side of word making is much more popular in South Korea. It shows so many graphs today, but again, these are some of the words, the fragments that used in Korean word, very much popular, and this is based on my work on Korean University's language dictionary. In Korea, not many dictionary. One thing I found really interesting about paper dictionary. I went to Korea a few years ago for my students to give them a present, the dictionary as my present, the small pocket dictionary. So we call it pocket dictionary, but again, it's Korean pocket dictionary. And I couldn't get any dictionary at all. So I was so surprised. And then I tried to order them online and everywhere. They said they don't have it in stock. And what is happening? And they said now everybody's looking at Naver or like online dictionary, so they don't publish the paper dictionary. So we're living in a very different time. But anyway, I look at this Korean University dictionary that's was very very popular because because it's again very like national dictionary, standard Korean dictionary. So called standard Korean dictionary is pretty much prescriptive dictionary, but Korean University dictionary, somehow they aimed to be more descriptive compared to the other dictionary, which is more prescriptive. So anyway, in that dictionary, I was able to figure out many Korean English words, and these are the words that they very frequently use to items in English fragments or English part in Korean words. So it's not like one word, but something with the team, card, camera, pro, hit, center, online, computer, cyber, internet, digital, global, service. These words were like considered as almost like Korean words. For example, like team there were about 50 words that has team as a part of word. So it's in a way like in actual use, those words used to part of Korean words. English Anglo, what I call Anglo prefixes, Anglo suffix, much more frequent than Sino-Korean, the Chinese prefix or Chinese suffixes, and it's very very popular. And as I said, it's very useful. Like you can chop whatever you want, and then you can put together. For example, maybe I don't have it here, but in South Korea, there's what like tel. It's not like tell, say something, but hotel, tel part, a part of the word hotel, tel has been chopped, and Koreans use this tel as a accommodation, luxurious or expensive. So they use a lot of accommodation type using tel to mean some kind of accommodation that is expensive and luxury. So something tel is been very used to again like daily. So this is one way of making Anglo-Korean words, talking about some another words, few words that has been entered into OED this year. I know that we have about 7 minutes. So I'll be I'll be fast. Skinship. Okay, I did an interview a few years ago with the English people, speakers, and they kind of said, "Oh, skinship. What is skinship?" And they kind of my understanding was like, "Oh, it's a strange word." But now actually, skinship, people think, "Oh, this is cool word." And I did an interview with the CBC last month, and I said this is actually the word that I like most, because it somehow, these Korean words that are, circulated and used much in English language somehow fills the gap that it is in English language. It enriches the language, English language, and brings diversity into it. And skinship is, but then I look at skinship in Korean dictionary, which doesn't have that definition. It's interesting. The way how we use, Korean people use skinship is, the definition is OED, but then Korean dictionary doesn't want to have that definition in the dictionary. So again, I think you can see very interesting phenomena. We basically, I think in a year's time, you understand what skinship is, although that is found in Korean culture and Korean context, but definition wise, you will find it from OED, which is very interesting phenomena. But again, probably Japanese, but it's again like all speculation. We did a lot of search where the skinship is first used, but basically we had to leave it as a speculation because of lack of written material evidence. But anyway, nowadays skinship is English language, so we can use the skinship to kind of express some of the more the affectionate aspect, which is different. The way how we interact, emotional speaking, as the communication is different from language by language, culture by culture. And skinship is something that through K-drama, people understand, okay, this way of expressing love is kinship. So it's again, K-drama always backs up the meaning. So you have this embodied learning. So you don't have to have the full context, textual context. You understand the meaning of skinship, for example, and many words that enter OED and many English words through the backup of K-drama, because you learn those words, either address terms or these, more like generic terms through K-drama, very much so. And this is what I said yesterday. But still in Korean media, Konglish is always considered as, this is the word that I found in newspaper paper corpus: wrong, incorrect, painful, stupid, and frowned upon. These are the words and the big data corpus I found about how Korean media reflects about Konglish language and Konglish words. And so this is what I talked about yesterday, K-drama and the blending. Like ting is also very, what is ting? It's from meeting, and then we made all kinds of different ting to specify a different kinds of meeting. So we see again very much innovative. One can say, oh, what is it? But then well, you can also say, oh, this is very much innovative, and it caters all the needs that Koreans need for their everyday life. And these are the words that we worked on during this summer for the OED. And I think this is what I just told yesterday. Again, Korean people not really sure whether, although they use it all the time, and when we ask about identity, not quite sure. Korean English, Webtoon Korean English, not quite sure. So most of Korean people think Webtoon is Korean word, but then many UK people, this is again back in some years ago, so they may have changed now, but this is maybe Webtoon, not really Korean words, and web service Korean words maybe. But this is something very much like English has an English fragment. There's no kind of Korean fragment. Originally, in terms of language heritage, these are also English words, but very much so like detailed IT description. But people have different opinions, and it's important that no matter whether you use those words or understand those words, one can have different perspective about this word and attitude towards this word. So kind of shows that aspect. And again, we talk about chime, talk about skinship, and in a way, this is kind of what I believe that the more we interact, the more language come together. There'll be like commonality will grow, but also at the same time diversity will grow too. So this is kind of the model that I'm working on. I'm presenting, arguing. Basically, more languages we are exposed than ever. So we know more, we have all kinds of, my lexicon, my brain, I have so many words from all over the place and all different situations. But at the same time, more people now have common vocabulary, commonality. So it's going to be our future in our, next generation. We will be exposed to share more, we'll be encouraged to share more words together. But at the same time, the more diversity will be welcomed and encouraged. So I think that's what maybe I can, because of the time, I will stop here. But again, like branding is one more thing. in the past, people say, oh, branding, brand name is not, not the word. Brand name is, very much specific. But now Google is FaceTime, Facebook, all these big names are now going to, pressurizing. Oh, they should be also entering into OED. Then, dictionary. What are the criteria? Frequency, yes, so many times. Distribution all over the place. Frequency and distribution, if you are looking at the two things, all these brands names should enter as part of English language and dictionary. So if something is very popular, so one can kind of again think about, is it important, is it necessary to have the sort of one language dictionary, one language lexicon at all when in our global trans-languaging environment? And again, so many people, Twitter is very important in a way. How common people, we ordinary people interact, and it's become very much visible, leaving the textual evidence every time we tweet. And some people say this is bibimbap is a salad. Koreans don't think bibimbap is salad, but it doesn't matter whether it's kind of different view. We don't think bibimbap salad, but many people think bibimbap salad. In the Twitter, when you see the corpus, the bibimbap salad is very, very popular. So it may be that in future bibimbap salad will become also a part of English word. Or Koreans may say, oh, it's not a salad, but it doesn't matter. I think we can all have to have more, open view about the words that we use. Somehow it's locally used, and in the past it's much more local use. But as we go on, it'll be more like a global use, and we share the lexicon together. And in doing that, for example, bibimbap, the different ways of romanization, but we need to understand why there's so many different variations, because again, this is the way how social media works and how the common ordinary people can participate in what share is natural. But also at the same time, we see, as I talked today, the different linguistic characteristics of two languages, and it's inevitable to have many versions, many varieties. And this is, I think, everything I have, and then I will get some questions, but before then, in January, I'm planning these 2 talks about languages of BTS and languages of K-drama and K-film. If you're interested, please be in touch. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Jieun, for a wonderful lecture. And I think we have a few questions and the comments. And let me ask for, Santi, right, could you reiterate the comment to all of us?
Yes, hi. Thank you for the lecture today and yesterday. I learned a lot. I never knew that in South Korea they're using so many English words. What I want to know is because Konglish, you say it's very, you see it as they say it as a very negative point of view, and yesterday you touched upon English, learning English and English words determine the social status in South Korea. So wouldn't, let's say if hybrid words and Konglish words end up in a proper English dictionary, like Oxford Dictionary, wouldn't that elevate or the Konglish into a non-negative way of looking at it, because it's made its way to an English dictionary? It's more, they can look at it as, oh, we are enriching our culture, our hybrid culture, because like you say, South Koreans are very good in creating words. They're the best in creating words compared to all the other languages. So I would say, wouldn't they look at it as this way, because now Korean dramas are hitting Netflix like nobody's business. Everyone's looking forward to the next hit Korean drama. And they are coming up with new words. So if these words end up in proper English dictionary for everyone else to use, perhaps they will look at it slightly different. But I don't know how serious the campaign to purify Korean words are in South Korea, because I think in other countries, they have their own sections to purify their words. But as more English words are used, more English hybrid words are accepted. So yeah. I think that's my comments.
I think that's really, really good question and good comment. I as a matter of fact, 2 days ago, I talked in a radio show in South Korea about, this. I talk about Konglish from Oxford, and they kind of expect me to talk about, making our English more like, privileged English. And I mean here, but when they hear me talking about promoting Konglish, how that actually will cater our, how they should be appreciated and part of our language, they, people can have different opinions, like, oh, strange, but it's because we, this period, language purification, standardization, we are very used to it, and particularly, from 1970 onwards, it's been like, because they thought that making language all like simple one unifying language would create some kind of economic boost. So there's been, a lot of effort made last 40 years. So it's kind of difficult to change it overnight. But I think, it's very important and to kind of, to, in a way, I mean, like linguistically, the word like purification, we use the word all the time, in South Korean media, purification and standardization. I mean, if you kind of make it more standardized and purify lexicon, which is difficult and impossible, but no government can control. So this is why NIK always publish a list of the word, and you should say this instead of that instead of this. Nobody knows what their replacements are, and we use whatever words we make. So the policy never worked, and I think this is not just Korean, but across. But I think it's true that there's kind of a lot of work to be done about sort of the English language and kind of the attitude towards English, and because I think so much so it's a sort of prejudiced or the biased. So it's the way how it's important for South Korean society to have this hierarchy, which is good and bad, and in a way because it also influences their status, and it kind of reminds me of the time when Sejong first invented Hangul in 1443, 1446. When he invented the alphabet Hangul, you may imagine like everybody will be happy, like we got our own resource and alphabet, and we can obviously talk better, we can express better. Why not? But as you all maybe you have heard about, when he first invented the alphabet, all of his subordinates were very much deadly serious against it, because simply they didn't want to share the privilege. Sharing privilege with other people, it's not a good thing for them, for their power. So when you think about this Konglish discussion, it kind of echoes me back to 1446, because Konglish, the more like we kind of make this Konglish is very much part of our, linguistic, very much legitimate linguistic resources that would make particular people less comfortable. I think there's some, so more like deep down, I think that is could be.
Does the purification of the Korean language come more from the older generation, or
Yes.
is it more to determine the hierarchy, the middle class to the higher class? Okay, we campaign for purification because they are the ones able to send their children overseas to study, so they will keep the maintain of class level.
But also this is kind of interesting because we talk about purification, but at the same time we kind of encourage the English language. So it's kind of having good English, so-called good English. They use the native, good English is good thing. But when it comes to Korean, let's make it clear that we have pure Korean. So in a way, when I think about it from applied linguist perspective, make it clear, let's make the distinction clear. English is English, Korean is Korean. Let's get rid of anything impure. So there was Hangul Day, 9th of October, there was a kind of talk about how amazing Hangul is, therefore we need to purify Hangul. That was still in 2021, we talked, but then at the end of the talk, say how amazing it is for us to have some words like skinship and so on in the OED. So there's a two contradicting message. So it's kind of like, I think it's important for Korean people to understand the Korean language, our lexicon. You can't actually say this is Korean, this is English, but actually how we integrate and how we use together, and how actually the way how we so innovatively made up Konglish lexicon is I think it's our soft power. It's not something that we should say, oh, this is wrong word, but actually so important and so played so important role for us to, for example, like IT, you have so many words. If you have those words, it's so convenient for us to communicate and develop the concept. So in a way, I believe these words kind of behind the scenes soft power, the Konglish, rather than, so it's something that one has to kind of change and overcome the barriers, I think. But I do believe that, this Konglish is kind of soft power of this Hallyu and soft power of South Korean economy, I would say, IT development and so on. But I think there's some very much like, the view, political view. I think it's kind of not like purely linguistic view or like, but pretty much political view that kind of makes me think about discussions 1446. Kind of similar political view, which I think we all very much familiar wherever we are. Politics try to rule our daily life, so we can see that. But which I very much hope would change in the future generation.
Oh, thank you for the explanation. It's really good talk. I really enjoyed today.
Thank you.
For Santi, for your comment and questions. And is there anyone who has any questions before we conclude? Any general comment or even appreciation? Right. If I may bother, can I ask just very brief question, Jieun? But my question could be a bit biased, so and also as listed in the typing chat, please feel free to leave your send your questions, comments, or suggestions to Jieun whenever you have. So my question is just brief and general question. Before that, I want to clarify that as a Korean person, I really love and proud of my culture and Korean culture. But as I love my country, but sometimes I'm a bit worried of the nationalism in Korean culture. So speaking straightforward, just do you think that whether we have some nationalism in the Korean language culture and whether it gives the negative impact for just such any translingual or the hybridization of the Korean language, if you have any idea?
I think probably I can't kind of have this may be another topic to discuss.
Sure.
But I think one thing, for example, like I think Koreans somehow still, even now in 2021, we kind of maybe politicians or like some people kind of I see something very amusing now that I lived in outside Korea so many years that Koreans somehow take pride in being monolingual, monocultural. Like we are very often you see like the phrases like we are monolingual, monocultural, and as a way again like how pure we are and so on and so forth. And I think it's kind of amusing, like of course, it's nothing to be proud of to be monocultural, monolingual. If that is the real case, then it's something that we should feel shame about. Why are you not interacting with others? But at the same time, this word like monolingual, monocultural, or it's not true. Korea is not anymore like monolingual, monocultural. We see like I maybe in another study, and I look at basically the children who as we know, these days birth rate in South Korea very low. But like in terms of like population growth, multilingual, multicultural, the children who are born with multicultural, multilingual environments in South Korea growing very fast. So you can't, if you say about always like Koreans monolingual, monocultural, it's kind of also somehow kind of having making those people who are part of our who is our language and culture. We're not anymore monolingual, monocultural. We're kind of more like multilingual, multicultural. There's so many foreign people out living in Korea too. So if you kind of always emphasize this monolingual, monocultural purification, means that those people would always feel like very much like outsiders, and it's very unwelcoming. So I think these languages, the phrases that very often Koreans, I hope it's kind of unconscious use. It should change, and in a way we have to kind of change perhaps the change would start from more or less linguistic level, like some of the words that very much like distinguish Koreans and non-Koreans, and the various ways should change, and we should at least I think we should talk about we are very proud of our 5,000-year history, monolingual, monocultural, and in the history of too, in Korean history, and at least I can talk about language. We've never been like really monolingual, monocultural. We always had so much interaction, just like anywhere else. But I think Koreans have this like habit of talking like monolingual, monocultural, and so on. So I think that's something that I think the discussion again very much so I hope to change.
Oh, thank you very much. I mean, it was quite weird. I mean, the abstract question, but thank you very much for your good address. I mean, the telling us the general directions. And once again, so we really appreciate Jieun's efforts and to give us this very wonderful and intellectual the seminars. And also, I really wish to emphasize again and again to all of you to join us this opportunity yesterday and today. I hope that this lecture series would be helpful to you for your understanding Korean language and culture in some extent. And please give your attention to our website of the Korean Education Center. And I hope to see you again in near future, but could be probably next year. So yeah, take your time, take care, and see you next time.
Thank you all. Thank you for coming.